Could do what?
We can put it in the chat and just say if there's any elected reps or commissioners on that one.
Four 59. Ira. Ira. Five. It's five, so I'd get him going.
Good, Sheriff.
Good, how you doing?
Good. Nice seeing you. I was actually talking about you just today
Cool.
at our city administrator and Tim Harkin, because we're redoing the radio conference now. And I said, you know, one of the ones that I went to, I was with all you guys laughing. I said, I hope we can do that again.
Okay, welcome everybody. I hope that you can hear us. I know that the town board does their meetings here and I don't have a sound system. My name is Ida Rukavina. I'm the executive director of the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools. We're otherwise known as RAMS. We're a nonprofit organization that started over 80 years ago. Any town, city, or public school in the taconite assistance area, which is the same as the IRRB, is eligible to pay dues and be a member of RAMS. We have a 24-member board consisting of elected officials from across the region. They are elected to 2-year terms by our membership units each year at the annual meeting and election. We also have corporate members that help contribute support to our organization. Our main mission is to enhance the economic well-being of the Iron Range and to advocate for issues on which we all agree. And throughout the years, we worked on issues such as homestead property relief, local government aid, broadband funding, infrastructure funding, support of our mining industry through tariffs and legislation. And today we're hosting this regional ambulance service meeting because of the impact to our towns, cities, and residents. There's been a lot of news stories in the local papers in recent times covering some of the challenges that rural EMS and ambulance services are facing. Whether it's workforce or volunteer shortage or funding issues, we know that the challenges are great. This impacts our region, and we don't believe that our rural residents deserve to have less access to life-saving care than others in more urban areas. We know that we have an aging population in northern Minnesota as well, and that impacts us, whether it's higher service needs, less volunteers, and even with the reimbursement rates for people on Medicare or Medicaid. Tonight, RAMS is not here to advocate for one solution or another, but to bring people and communities together to start discussing the issues and challenges. We've invited our county commissioners as well as state and federal delegation members because it's important for our lawmakers to hear from you about the challenges and needs that you face. We've invited a panel of 5 service directors here tonight to hear from them, but we have to know there's a lot of other people in the audience, and we want to allow for a chance to hear from all of you and have discussion. I'll be asking the panel a series of questions. Is it good?
Yeah, there's a lot on here too, so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, and there's, thank you to those of you who joined online as well. I know you can't see the whole room, but the room is pretty packed here. So I'm glad that the town hall has broadband and we're able to get online and Zoom tonight for those who couldn't drive from further. So tonight, after the panel, we'll go through some discussion and Q&A with the audience. And then we would ask that each of you speak up when you're asking questions, just so that the people online can hear, but I can reiterate the questions as well. I know that the last couple of years have been stressful on all of us, but we know that the first responders and all of you have faced a significant change in your workload. And we thank all of you for what you do for our communities, for the life-saving efforts and service you provide. There's also a number of representatives who couldn't make it tonight, and those who are here. Jason Mesa, the Deputy Commissioner of the IRRB, is here.
State Representative Julie Sandsted is here. Itasca County Commissioners Leo Trent and Ben DiNucci are both here. St. Louis County Commissioners Keith Nelson are here, and Commissioner Mike Jugovich is on his way. And Coochin County Commissioner, I'm forgetting your names.
Jason Schobel.
Thank you for coming. If there's anyone else, we thank you as well for coming. I do have a letter from State Representative Dave Listengard, and then Commissioner Nelson, did you just want to read the statement from Paul McDonald? Because I know a lot of you are here from Northern St. Louis County as well, and you couldn't be in attendance, but you would.
Absolutely. This is a message from Commissioner McDonald, and it'll explain it thoroughly. First off, I apologize for not being in attendance for this meeting. I am celebrating my 30th wedding anniversary with my lovely wife Tracy, and we are on a mystery tour. Duty calls. I would like to thank Rams and Ida Riccobini for putting this meeting together, and I am very thankful for the great attendance. How did he know it was going to be great attendance? But anyhow, my fellow commissioners are in attendance, and we are all aware of the issues facing rural EMS services, and we'll have a debriefing session when I return. Challenges including long distance and challenging routes, which increase response time, insufficient payment by insurers, staffing issues in every part of the country, and lack of state and federal policy coordination across oversight agencies, to name a few. The timing of this meeting is perfect. Yesterday, I attended a webinar on rural EMS, and I know many of you were there as well. We as commissioners have met with many departments and cities and townships and are aware of the issues facing the industry. This problem will not be solved with funding increases alone, and welcome the discussion as this topic moves forward. Thank you for your attendance this evening. This is a very important beginning to working together for a solution that meets the needs of our citizens. And that's from Commissioner Paul McDonald, the chair of the St. Louis County.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. And if you did get the handout to the webinar that Commissioner McDonald mentioned, happened yesterday. So again, really timely. There's a lot of people around the state talking about this. The Center for Rural Policy and Development. I'm not endorsing this, but it was so timely. There was a webinar yesterday that we printed this worksheet as well, if any of you are interested. I also wanted to say the federal delegation staff was invited, and we have Rachel Leckwood-Camp with Senator Amy Klobuchar's office here. And I know that Senator Tina Smith, staff person Pete Mikowski wanted to be here, but was on the road. Is anyone here? Anyone else? Okay. And then I guess I'll just briefly read State Representative Listengard's letter too, because he couldn't be here. He is online listening as much as he can, but as you know, they're still in session right now, and so it's really difficult to schedule, and they got to get work done at the Capitol. So it says, "Dear ambulance service providers, thank you for participating in today's event hosted by Rams. We all value a successful, sustainable system of ambulance providers as part of a larger foundation of health and public safety in rural areas. Your advocacy and engagement with elected officials are critically important to strengthening EMS service across the region and across the state. While I regret I'm unable to join you today, I appreciate everyone coming together to share ideas and concerns while finding solutions to stabilize and enhance the services each of you provide. I've heard the struggles and challenges loud and clear for many years on a piecemeal basis, and I'm hopeful by coming together to develop a coalition through today's discussions, we'll be able to share your stories more effectively at the Capitol. The workforce shortages are particularly alarming and require urgent action. Without shifts adequately covered, the safety of the public will be in jeopardy. Low reimbursement rates, leadership turnover, and growing geographic areas are all additional threats to the viability of EMS services in rural areas. It's imperative that we work together to find answers and solutions. Along with other state, county, and local leaders, please know that we all acknowledge the challenges you're facing, and we're committed to working with you to maintain the viability of EMS service. Minnesotans never know when we will need to call upon you, but they do. They count on the reliable, life-saving services you provide. Don't hesitate to contact him, and I'll give you his number if you want it. So, okay, and with that, I'm just gonna start with go around with the panel if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can start with questions. So,
All right, start self and service.
yep.
All right, hello, my name is Alan Lewis. I'm the Fire Chief and Emergency Manager for the City of Virginia. In addition to that, I'm also an adjunct professor with Columbia Southern University and an associate consultant with Emergency Services Consulting International. The Virginia Fire Department covers 640 square miles of primary service area for our ambulance and 17 square miles of fire protection area within the City of Virginia. In addition to that, we intercept with over 1,000 square miles for BLS services in providing advanced life support care. Being an all hazards department, we do everything from ice water rescue or ice rescue to swift rope rescue to technical rescue through our use. I want to acknowledge our local 390 union representatives that are in the audience today, Battalion Chief Martinson and Battalion Chief Erickson. So with that.
Excuse me, I am Teresa Algram. I'm the ambulance director in Evelyn. I do not know our exact service area acreage or miles, but it is large. We cover a really big area. We are a BLS service, basic life support ambulance service. We average about 800 to 850 calls a year, which is pretty busy for, not call fire or ambulance. And we staff about 25 people. We're always looking for more, and which I'm sure we're going to get into. And blessed with a really good staff.
I'm Jess Davis, Ambulance Director and Emergency Manager for City of Chisholm. As many of you know, it's a newly formed department, having taken over operational control the new year. So also being relatively new to Chisholm and Minnesota as a whole, I am not entirely certain on the specific acreage of our coverage area, but it is all of Chisholm proper. We also cover Vulcan and French townships, and we are also very excited and willing to help extend mutual aid assistance to any of our neighboring jurisdictions. Much like Teresa's group here, where our paid on call department, I'm busy growing and getting our personnel trained. Same thing, staffing concerns as everybody else.
My name is Dustin Roberts. I've been a volunteer firefighter for about 11 years, EMS for 7. Recently became the UV area ambulance director. Our PSA is over 1,500 square miles. It covers boundary waters. We do fly-ins. Last year, we roughly did 261 calls. We had 3 full-time paramedics or part-time ALS with 3 full-time paramedics, 6 part-time, 3 full-time EMTs, 11 part-time EMTs. We run 12-hour shifts. 24/7 ALS. We do mutual aid with neighboring townships. We don't get any government funding because we're a nonprofit. We rely on the townships.
Hi, I'm Donna Hopper, and I'm the office director for service. We cover 860 square miles. We go to Crane Lake, Capitolina, Nut Lake, and also the Cook Lake. We have service mutual aid agreements with Cook, Nut Lake, and Little Fork. Do approximately 150 to 160 rounds a year. And again, we have volunteer. We have no full-time or part-time individuals. There's 11 EMTs, 2 first responders, and 2 firefighters that drive for us. And staff, everybody else is an issue, and looking for volunteers.
My name is Eric Jacob, I'm the Fire Chief of the City of Hibbing Fire Department. Our jurisdiction for ambulance is about 600 square miles. We run about 4,000 calls a year. We have 28 ALS full-time staff. We're budgeted for 18 part-time on our fire side of our house. We do, much like Chief Lewis said, we interact with a lot of our friends in Itasca County, Southern St. Louis County, the ALS ambulance service through different mutual aid or cooperative agreements. Just every day is busier and busier. That was late because of it. So.
right, thank you. I did want to say as well online is State Representative Spencer Igo. And I also want to thank our Rams board members who are here in attendance. If you could raise your hand, we have Vice President Pat Missouri here, and then other board members around the room. If you just want to thank you. Okay, so first question, I'm going to start with you, Eric. At the end, we'll come back. What are the top 2 biggest challenges that you're currently facing?
To be honest with you, as an ALS provider that has a hospital in our jurisdiction, one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is the change of primary health care. When I started doing this a long time ago, we didn't do as many transfers as we do now. Our transfer volume in the last probably 6 to 8 years is quadrupled. So the level of interfacility transfers from Hibbing to wherever, Duluth, Rochester, Minneapolis, has exponentially grown. And that's been a bit of a challenge for us keeping up with that. The second thing is finding, in today's job market, finding good quality candidates. We're pretty lucky. We do have a full roster. It's been a little bit of a challenge for us, but as we look to grow and we look to adapt and overcome these things, if we were given carte blanche to hire 6, 8 more staff, they're not there. Even on the career side of it, they're not there.
Two biggest challenges facing us is of course staffing. Our daytime coverage is, very, very limited. Nights time is better. And of course, weekends, Saturday is a challenge, but Sunday's good. The other is just the opportunity for training. We're up there, we have to watch Zoom or do everything, in-house.
Justin?
I think Jacob said that the transports have come quite a bit, and to try to staff 24 with 2 crews. The other challenge is the money, the financing, that's not there. Covered for 24 hours.
We're kind of in a bit of an anomalous situation in Chisholm since we are kind of starting anew. So I think one of my biggest challenges at this point in time is the training and onboarding all of my people at once. I do have an amazing crew who are just pulling out all the stops and helping me with staffing. So I'm not as critical in staffing as a lot of other departments are, but long-term, I suspect that may become an issue for us. So I think training and onboarding of personnel is a big challenge for us in Chisholm specifically at this point in time. And I personally came from urban medicine, and I'm used to having my pick of many level 1 trauma centers and different specialty centers. So coming here to rural medicine and not having that wealth of choice available to me has been a significant learning curve. And just with all of the challenges as a whole that we're facing in EMS nationwide, is kind of compounding the factor in playing hot potato with your hospitals and figuring out where there's room to put patients that need that specialty care, particularly in the midst of pandemic operations. So it's really hard to pick 2 out of our challenges, but I'd say that would be it.
I believe in Evelyn, our number 1 is probably recruitment and retention. Even though we have a very supportive city government who has given us 2 new ambulances and significant pay increases recently, like up to 33%. We have really strong city support. I think what we need to realize is the days of volunteerism are coming to a halt. It used to be when I started a long time ago, I got paid $1.50 an hour. It cost me money to go to work on the ambulance because I paid my babysitter more. So I actually lost money, but we did it as community involvement because we love it and whatever. And there's a lot of people that are still there doing it for that, but there are less and less, and those that are there doing that are much older, and they're not going to be there forever. Well, some might be, but anyway, there are just decreasing numbers in people who are interested in going into EMS because there's low wages. It's a demanding job. There's in EMS in Minnesota, 80% of Minnesota is volunteer. And throughout the pandemic today, 60% of them have not worked in 2021. So that gives you a huge idea of how we are really trying everything we can to recruit new people. A lot of that, you know what I mean? Who wouldn't want to come to work underpaid and get filled with somebody's body fluid and then in a lifetime of PTSD and then, you know, for whatever measly wage? I wonder why we can't recruit. But the people who do come into it are the ones that really want to be there and they're in it for the right reason. And what makes them keep coming back is when they walk through the door on a call, knowing somebody from their local community and just the look on a patient's face saying, I am so relieved to see your face. I am so glad it's you that's here. This is my hometown ambulance. I know they're going to take care of me. And that makes it worth it. On the flip side of that, our people who are so dedicated are really getting burned out because our staff has decreased. I've got to give it to the staff in Evelyn. They're throughout this entire pandemic, nobody took advantage of, you know, illness and whatever with COVID. They still came to work every day. They did a really good job. They put their best forward and I couldn't be prouder of them. But it really added to the burnout too. You know, I mean, it's just really scary. Am I bringing this stuff home with my people? I've got ill relatives at home. I've got, you know, I myself may have, you know, underlying conditions or whatever. So that was really something. So I think recruitment and retention and burnout are probably two of the biggest challenges. Well, that's probably one. The other one is definitely funding. But like my counterparts here did say, we one of the big things is county reimbursement. This date is burned in my mind. October 9th, 1984. That is when the county decided on the reimbursement rate for ambulance services. $16 a call and 22 cents a mile. And it has never been increased. October 9th, 1984. There's something wrong with that. We have representatives here from Itasca County who get, and I could be wrong on my numbers and they can definitely correct me, but $60,000 a year for the ambulance, and every 4 to 6 years they buy a new ambulance. That's a huge difference. That would make all the difference in the world for our ambulance services. At least a hell of a good start.
Driver, go ahead.
Oh, I like it. It's nice to hear some of those things, because I have trumpeted that. The challenge of funding is definitely right up there. I want to say that the number one, though, is the amount of time that our ambulances and emergency services that are being pulled away from the city of Virginia into other areas. Only 46% of our time on a 911 call is spent in the city of Virginia. 46% of our time, spent outside the city of Virginia. 54% of our time is spent inside the city of Virginia on a 911 call. You say, well, where are you going on those other 46% of the time? Well, it's right here at Clinton. It's to Cherry. It's to Tower. It's to Evelyn. It's to Gilbert. It's to Mountain Iron. It's all of the surrounding communities. And so in that PSA, we're pulled in those directions. And then it's also the transfers. So 33% of our calls are actually interfacility transfers. And that really takes a toll on your staff, especially the transfers when they're, 3 hours for a round trip to Duluth, sometimes to Peace River Falls for the mental health transports. Most of our transports are actually mental health. Cardiac's a good number second. But these mental health transfers have to be done because there is simply no beds. So these transfers and these trips out of the area pull our staff in so many directions. Their unit hour utilization is just absolutely maxed out. And they come out off a 24-hour shift and they're exhausted. And I know because I come in at 0700 and I see them coming out and I'll ask, how was your night? And I just I'll get the look. Like it was awful. Like you can see it in their eyes. They're absolutely worn out. It takes them the entire next day. And some of the studies have shown with sleep deprivation that it actually takes 2 full days to recover. Well, guess what? They don't get 2 full days. They get to go back to work after 1 day off. And so for 24 hours, they get subjected to that constant calls, Today was an absolute round trip transfer shuttle from nursing home to the hospital, from the hospital back to the nursing home. On top of that, then there's these overtime things that come up, public relations event. And put you on the spot. Our battalion chief here today worked the PAC test so that the U.S. Forest Service could qualify some members from the DNR to go out of state. They had to have medics for standby. Well, he's worked that already today. Now he's here for the meeting tonight, and he'll be back on shift tomorrow. So when you do that over and over again, it takes a toll on your people. And you can say, well, they're paid. Yeah, they are. But the pay has not kept up with what this job is. And I know a couple of pay equity studies that have gone on. So the time that is being committed, the places that it's being committed, and then keeping up with the recruitment, because who really wants to do this job? And like Teresa said, to get body fluids on you and possibly some PTSD to go with that from, you know, and I won't get into the very, very graphics. You can only imagine the kind of things that our personnel see. Mental health is a huge concern for us. And then you throw on top of that cancer that is coming through and some of these items that they're exposed to. I worry about the health and safety of our personnel. I worry about the longevity of a service that just has not kept up compensation wise. And I'll tag off with Teresa on that. $16 a call, 22 cents a mile for calls in unorganized townships. 1984. That has to change. We have got to fund EMS as an essential service. If we don't do that, why is EMS expected to either break even or make money? We don't ask our cops to do that. We don't ask our fire departments to do that. But for some reason, EMS has not been deemed an essential service in the state. And our legislators need to take that up. They need to make EMS an essential service and they need to fund it. Otherwise, you're going to call one day 911 and you're not going to get an ambulance. And I'm not being melodramatic. It has literally been myself and either a battalion chief or sometimes a deputy chief that have staffed the last ambulance in our city to sometimes respond. Well, why is that? We've got a couple out on transfer, we've got a couple doing intercepts, and we have a local in Virginia now. And we just simply don't have the resources. But it is expensive to hire and train and keep ALS paramedics and firefighters. And we have an entire city to protect for fire as well as provide this essential service of EMS. So we're happy to do it. We've got to get some reimbursement. We've got to get help from the state. We've got to get help from the county. So those biggest challenges, time commitment and recruitment.
Thank you. Yeah, and some of these issues have been coming around and we've been talking about them for a number of years. Mental health and just how things are related. One of the webinars that Rams hosted early this year was the Minnesota State Demographer, and we had a really good presentation with her just talking about the changes to northern Minnesota. And if you think that like the retirement, is kind of coming to a close soon, like she mentioned that there's like another 8 years still of baby boomers retiring. We have an aging population, and in our rural townships and stuff, what we're facing is hard. We've been hearing about finding volunteers and that difficulty for a number of years. And obviously it's been compounded in the last couple of years. So the next question would be, what do you hear from your personnel? And some of you maybe have already kind of addressed this, but from your employees, your personnel, is there like top challenges? And I know that, there's families and then there's aging, volunteers as well, but what would you say for that?
I would say from our personnel, they're tired and they're a bit frustrated because the health system has designed an ambulance is a transportation modality. It is not a treatment option in itself. And for too long, we've looked at ambulances as being a solution rather than just a part in an EMS delivery system. And so when we are called to go to everything from literally hangnails to I'm feeling sad to, some of these calls that are just better handled by psychologists and psychiatrists. And one of the things that we've done as an innovative challenge is we've partnered with Range Mental Health to create a compassionate community response team. And those individuals can go out and they're part of the team from Range Mental Health. And we've got a wonderful person, Gabby Sukin, actually Nina's daughter. She actually goes to these people that need a mental health counselor. They don't need an ambulance. They need somebody to talk to. We have to look at different ways to deliver health care. and not think that everything needs an ambulance. You know, in the United Kingdom right now, you call their emergency 999 number, you're not necessarily getting an ambulance. They're gonna go through what's called a triaging system, and they're gonna determine whether you actually need an ambulance or not. And that ambulance might actually show up 2 to 3 hours later. And you think, well, that's terrible. But actually, the number of truly life-threatening injuries and emergent situations that we encounter are relatively minor compared to the total call volume. We ran 4,467 calls last year. Of that, really only 10 to 15% are what they consider advanced life support calls. We have to have a better way to sort our calls instead of first into dispatch, first out. Some calls should be triaged, some calls can be weighted, some calls can go to other sources. We need other ways to transport mental health patients. It's not appropriate to send a mental health patient in the back of an ambulance all the way to Deep River Falls. You know, I've been told there's the most expensive transportation, the second most expensive transportation in the world is an ambulance. First is a space shuttle. And, you know, if anybody's gotten an ambulance bill, you probably would agree to that. Those bills are exorbitant. You know why they're exorbitant? Because I only collect 39% of that bill. How would you run a business if you collected 39% of what you sent out? So 80% of our patients in this area are Medicare, Medicaid, or PMAC, meaning they fall under the state's insurance plan. There are set amounts per call we get from that. I bill out over $7 million a year. I collect 39% of that. So there is definitely a funding problem. And, you know, from our personnel, you know, they don't concern themselves with funding. Somebody calls, they go, they take care of them, they transport them. But at some point, they also come back and they go, Chief, this is ridiculous. Why are we sending an ambulance to this person? They don't need an ambulance. What they need is a mental health worker. What they need is a mode of transportation, maybe all the way to Deep River Falls, in the back of a nice, comfortable car, not an ambulance. But the state regulations and Medicare regulations only reimburse for ambulance trips. So we have got to change some of those legal parameters that allow for reimbursement to allow people to do the right thing, which is cheaper.
Very true. What do I hear from my personnel as their biggest challenges? I hear pretty much what I just said. I hear the recruitment and retention. We need to hire more people to create less burnout. But where do we find the people? That is one of our biggest things. And along with that comes the mental health of our own staff with the burnout and whatever else. So that's one of the things I hear. The other one, is, you know, recruitment and retention, and probably it's a reimbursement because it trickles down. And as much as we don't like to, the staff shouldn't have to worry about, are we going to be able to afford the next piece of equipment and whatever else, but they know, and they, you know, they shouldn't have to worry about it, but they do. And I believe that there are a lot of funding sources out there that I would hope that we don't know about yet, or maybe that can be changed, that we can take advantage of. I know that the EMSRB is very supportive in helping us in that, as is Arrowhead EMS, our regional portion of the EMSRB, and they help us a lot, and they help us, you know, with training and equipment and whatever else we need. But the staff is really concerned about it. They're concerned about burnout. They're concerned about hiring more people. They're concerned about keeping more people. So unfortunately, in Evelyn, we're kind of a little training ground, and we keep them for 2 years, and they go to the next town over. Or a couple towns over. Yeah, you're welcome. You're getting a good one. And so I believe that those are probably the biggest challenges and concerns of our staff as well. You know, not just the city and the administration, but our staff as well.
That's might be a different situation with new employees.
Yeah, it's, again, I've got a great crew, and they all put their heads down and just work themselves to death. And a lot of the concerns I've heard from them have not been concerns for themselves, but concerns for their peers in the system as a whole. They want to see the system succeed. They know the state of EMS everywhere, so that they're voicing the same concerns that we're all talking about tonight. I know on the top of a lot of their minds is mental health, much has been addressed here. Not only that of the patient, but of ourselves. Concern for ourselves, for whatever reason, be it the burnout, exposures, PTSD, overworking, stressors, being pulled in every direction whatsoever.
Basically the same, burnout is the biggest one, it's mental health, it's, driving to Fargo and coming back and going back to Philip. They're getting burnt out of multiple transports. It's, and funding, we had to put off some training this year for a little while, to get funding to provide training. People love to train, but gotta have funding for it.
Well, it depends on the day, what I hear the biggest challenges. My husband, Bill, recently became an EMT, and he's the sole EMT mostly on day shift. So if it's during the day, I'm gonna hear from him. If it's at night, I'll hear from my son Patrick. So he's in the evening. It all depends what my challenge is, but mainly it's gonna be staff and just like everybody else. Stress. One of the other challenges that we have is, they were talking about going outside of your area, and we've been responding a lot to mutual aid calls, and what's been happening a lot is we get en route and we get canceled, which is fine. But the staff was saying, that's wear and tear on my car to get to the hall, and they're all volunteer. We get $4 an hour for a call, and minimum stipend for a run call. So I said, you know what? Why don't we'll start keeping track of those times and start paying for those individuals, because the other challenge lately is the snow. I mean, come on, there's you guys hardly have any snow down here, but up north, if we had to go to a call, we still have to run with the 4-wheel drive because we're not going to get in some of these driveways. Snow is a big issue there, so. And then, of course, the wage, like everyone was talking about, is an issue. I mean, $4 an hour. And, yeah, that out of city run, it has been since the resolution is pretty old. So that's what
I don't think our staff cares about the money. They care about their most precious commodity, and that commodity is time. You can't get time back. Demands of our time, whether it's at work or out of work. Being on the career side of our services, we love to help our friends, our neighboring communities. We get tasked with that on a fairly regular basis, primarily because we have the staff. If you look at the demographics of our calls over the last 20 years, it's exponentially expanded. And for us as administrators in hospital-based or an area that has a hospital, when we look at the funding mechanism, the honest truth is the funding's in transfers. Transfers can help rejuvenate the revenue stream. So as an administrator, we want to take those transfers to help the bottom line to keep us operating. We have an obligation to create, to cover our 911 calls and do the things, being a dual role fire department. And then just like Alan said, an all hazard organization, we've quadrupled our call volumes in a short amount of time, and we haven't kept up with our staffing levels. There haven't been the funding levels, which is kind of a sore subject. But overall, our staff, we beg them to come in on their days off. We have a messaging platform like a lot of you, their services do, and we send out revolving doors of messages begging for staff to come in. And to be honest with you, we get about 0. If we get some big critical event that will come, they'll come. And I don't necessarily blame them, because you can't get their time back. They come to work a 24-hour shift, and at best, our crews are getting 4 to 5 hours of rest in a 24-hour shift, very inconsistently where that's consecutive. We get demands for transfers anywhere from 5 to 10 times a day, just from Hibbing. That's not including Cooks and Virginias and all these other places.
And again, as an administrator, we want to look at those things and say, geez, if we take that run, that's going to help the revenue stream for next year's budget for the ambulance things. But every time we do a Duluth transfer, sometimes we go 4, 5, 6 times a day. That's 4 hours round trip for us in great weather. That's not, you know, not like our friends in the High Falls where it's like an overnight camping trip. But it's a catch-22 for us. We don't make, and it doesn't matter if you're the Tower Ambulance Service or Cook Ambulance Service, we don't get reimbursed for nearly the cost of operations on 911 calls. That is our statutory obligation, and we're happy to do it. For those of us that have the ability to take transfers, the transfers are what are offsetting. It's like looking at healthcare today. There's no reason that healthcare is expensive as it is, but it's offsetting some other cost that isn't funded somewhere. You know, like Alan said, we bill out millions and millions of dollars worth of services and we collect, you know, a third of that. And that third of that still doesn't cover what it costs us to operate. So our biggest, my biggest thing, even including ourselves, look at what you did to get your schedule here. Look at the people that couldn't get here. Your most precious commodity is time. And we are demanding more of our staff on duty, and we're begging them off duty to do it. And it's a burden. And to be honest with you, we kind of stopped doing it. You know, they come to work, they do a great job, they go home, and, you know, honestly, I hope I don't see them till the next shift, because that means it was a good day. So it's time, that you can't buy that.
Thanks, Sarah. So, I don't know, I think we're gonna skip the next question. I guess I'll just move to this one. The legislators, the state legislators, our federal delegation that are here, our county commissioners, what would you see as ways that they can help, that suggestions on policy or regulations? And again, I know we could go on, and we've heard some of them, but the top regulations that you think would improve the service and expand the reliability of services provided. Want to start, Eric, or?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, whether it's local politicians, whether it's our county, whether it's our city, state, federal, they have to be on the same page. You know, we can have all the support we want from our city council, we can have all the support we want from our town boards, we can have all the support we want. But if we don't have that support lined up to make you know, like Alan was saying, the vast majority of our run volume for ambulance is Medicare, Medicaid insurance premium, you know, patients. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But the flat rate that we get to roll out the door to go deal with, you know, 60 to 70% of our call volume barely puts fuel in the truck. And that needs to be echoed from all of our governing leaders, not just the city government or just the township or whatnot. It needs to go right up the chain, because honestly, if it doesn't start at the federal level and trickle down to the state levels and to the counties and to the local jurisdictions, it isn't going to happen. You can have Mr. McDurry pound his fists all day long, and if it doesn't go up the chain, it's not going to work. And we've, you know, in 30 years of doing this, it hasn't changed yet. When you look at the regulations and things, I know that if you look at the Office of Legislative Auditors, they did a pretty good audit lately of the EMSRB. Some of our EMSRB folks in the back of the room, you know, there hasn't been any significant look at and changes in a lot of the regulations that we do since 1983, 84, in that early area. Obviously, the demographics of what we do is grotesquely different. So, I mean, we can start at that footstep. The most important thing is we need our governors, our local, state, county governors, federal, to be on the same page. And I know that in today's political climate, you're asking a lot, but that's how you get things done. And no matter what it is, it boils down to funding. Funding will fix the time commitment. Funding will fix the equipment. Funding will fix the training. Funding will fix the staffing. Funding will fix all of it. It's all tied together. It's really interesting. If you look at our friends, whether it's in Tower or Cook or these other things, you know, they have the same training requirements for part-time or volunteer staff as what you have for career staff. The reason that we have career staff is because our funding mechanism and our tax levies can afford, with 4,000 plus runs a year, we have a base to do that. The training levels that Dina needs to do in Tower are exactly the same as they need to do for EMTs in their career service. They don't have the funding mechanism to do it. And I'm not advocating that we drop down training, but something's amiss with the whole process.
I did know what he said.
She gave me the notes.
I agree with her too. I mean, Minnesota's got to be a essential state for anything to really happen. We need to find everything.
That's giving you time. I could go on for hours on the subject. Especially having the unique perspective coming from out of state where things are run much differently. And I don't think there's a state out there that's perfect, but I'm probably not gonna be saying this right, but I don't feel like EMS has the priority in Minnesota that it does in a lot of other areas. I definitely agree. We need to be an essential service. I'm tired of being the redheaded stepchild of public safety. I mean, when you call 911, you want the ambulance there. You don't want to have to think about it. You don't want to have to explain it, anything. You want it, it's the expectation. And I believe every single one of us deserves to have that expectation and to have it realized. And I think a lot of that will be, assisted by becoming an essential service within Minnesota. I also think that there needs to be a push in, much as everybody else has said, training. But I think we also need to have an initial push in that initial training and trying to encourage people to get into this line of work. Why in God's name would a high school graduate consider going into public safety when we get worked to death with what feels to be zero recognition and it feels like is not an appreciated or an essential service within the jurisdiction? I can't remember, somewhere on the East Coast, but one of the Carolinas, I'm gonna say, actually just came out with a program since I've moved here, where EMS training is now free for their high school graduates and as a help to get people into the field. Let's get people excited. Let's give them something to be excited about. Let's have, I mean, those of us that are in the field are passionate about it, but it's hard to get other people on the outside excited about it when all they see is us getting beat up. Change that perspective, give them a reason to get involved and we can grow from there. Sorry, I'll step down with my stool now.
You stay there.
That's my soapbox.
I like your soapbox. I know that Representative John Hewitt from the South Metro, like Apple Valley area, if I'm not mistaken, has introduced a lot of legislation. And he has really been a huge advocate for EMS. He's an EMT himself. He understands what it's like to be behind the wheel, in the box of an ambulance, going into these places. And if we had legislators like Representative Hewitt, who would push forward and in a bipartisan, just understand what is going on the bottom line. Don't attach this other crap that's gonna make the bill fail. Just push it, get the stuff done. Give us what we need. A huge part of it coming from our local areas is the fact that our hospital in Virginia, when they built the ER, and my work husband for many years is sitting here, who was my ER partner for a long time. It was built when they had 6,000 patients a year. It's they're hauling in 6,000 patients a year, just Virginia. It is almost 30,000 patients a year now, and not one room nothing has been done to that ER. There's a 4 to 6 hour wait time. We're transporting to the next closest hospital. So now instead of going to Virginia, we're overwhelming Hibbing because they're on divert. Well, the EMSRB was extremely helpful. And we got a huge committee together saying, hey, you guys can't do this anymore. You're taking, instead of taking an ambulance out of service for a half an hour on a regular call, we're out for 2 hours now with no backup. which is putting weight on Virginia, and then it's putting weight on Cook, and it's putting weight on Tower. And I mean, everybody has to bump forward and do whatever. We need our local governmental representation to start squawking. The hospital is not okay the way it is right now, and it breaks my heart because I love the place. Blood, sweat, and tears, right, Glenn? You know, and do anything to watch it succeed. But no money is being put into it. There's no expansion of the ER, and that's really hurting us as EMS. It's a domino effect. They go on divert, we're going everywhere. White Lakes is in the same position. We really all are. So I think that aspect from our local government to put some pressure, I don't know how you can do it, but you guys can work some magic. I know you can. On our hospitals to say, hey, we need help. We need expansion. We need Essentia to put in 16 ER beds. They need to at least double it. Actually, don't stop at 16, let's go higher. And start going from there, because that is really hurting us, which is in turn hurting all of our patients. Because like Alan said before, you're not going to be guaranteed an ambulance anymore. We're out of the area, we're out of staff, they're out of staff, Tower's coming. I was on a call with a pediatric cardiac arrest, and there were no ambulances available, and I had to wait for Biwabic ambulance to come from on top of the hill at Giants Ridge all the way to Fail Township. That is not okay in any way, shape, or form. That's the kind of stuff. And why? There aren't enough people. There just aren't enough. These things have to change. Start from the state, push forward what I said. Our community and local governments need to push on the local level. Along with that is taxing districts, which is a whole new bubble, but there is no reason, and I know every city is going to have this, but I'm going to use Tower. They have Greenwood Township. They have Lake Vermilion with multi-million-dollar homes. And their budget is, if she told you what it was, you would cry. There's no taxing district. If you went to all these people and said, hey, listen, will you pay $30 a year for an ambulance service to make sure that we still have this in our area? Who's gonna squawk? Well, okay, I know, but for real, I mean, let's really put it into perspective. $30 a person a year to have an option of an ambulance available for you, especially in big areas like that. So anyway, and that just involves everywhere, and that's a whole nother conversation. So I'm gonna handle it.
No, I like that, because what Therese pointed out is that nothing happens in a silo. Everything that happens has a ripple effect. When we get sent from a divert from one hospital, it backs us up for hours, and it's like a wreck on a freeway. It doesn't take long for it to occur, but boy, it takes a long time for everything to get moving again. And that's literally what happens. And Chief, you know, from I Falls, you've actually had been called to come down and help unclog the mess. Yes.
I've got just a quick clarifying question. When we were talking about insurance reimbursement, does private insurance reimburse at a higher rate than Medicare?
Yes, but they're only 14% of my payers.
And less than that for us. In Evelyn, it's 80%, and I think this is pretty general across the board. 80% of our calls are Medicare and Medicaid. We are reimbursed $547.47. Now, if I have to call an Intercept, I have to pay them $600. I'm $50 in the hole.
Yeah, she literally loses money.
I lose money to call an Intercept. You know, so it's like, well, you're not gonna not call them. It's always, patient care is always number one, and if it's not, then you're in the wrong field. But yes, private insurance pays much more.
And you can't bill the patient is the other thing.
Correct.
Correct.
So
Once you set that rate.
They pay the 547 and you get nothing more.
Yes,
In Tower,
that you
we're
just have to accept it, and that's
85%.
what it is.
Oh, yeah, Medicaid. So
We'll
I'll
get into
finish.
questions too. I just want to let Alan finish up his point.
But what Teresa is referring to is the whole of government approach. We have to have government engaged at all levels, local townships, cities, state, and federal to address this issue. No one person's going to address it by themselves. We also have to achieve some operational efficiencies. And there are some things that we can do, starting at dispatch, how we triage calls, how calls are assigned. We'll take that cardiac arrest in Evelyn. There's a cardiac arrest in Evelyn. They're paged for the call. We hope then they will have staff on, but there's no ALS ambulance sent automatically. They have to call, and they do. They're great at calling. But why is that we have to have that pause in there for advanced life support? I'm sorry, but if your baby's not breathing, you don't want to have to think about, oh, should I call the appropriate level of care? No, it should be automatic. But right now, that is not how calls are dispatched. We dispatch calls right now according to whose area it's in rather than the service that patient needs. We are paying for it we're delivering care according to who's paying for it rather than delivering care according to who needs it. And so that disparity has to be addressed. So there's some operational efficiencies that could be achieved in this whole government approach. And we have to get past the parochialism that still exists in some areas where some people, want to handle it at that level. No, we have to combine resources, we have to combine districts, we have to combine services at some point, and we have to start looking at how we deliver what is needed for that patient. Otherwise, these, and a lot of people say, well, you live in the country, that's the chance, or that's just what you pay. Do you know that in many of the jurisdictions, the time, what we call shoot time, from the time the call is received to the time the wheels roll on an ambulance is longer than the actual travel time, meaning the time that ambulance goes to the scene. Think about that. It takes longer for EMTs to respond to the ambulance and roll out than it actually does to drive that distance. And these are in unstaffed areas. So there are some operational efficiencies that can be achieved by restructuring how we deliver care. First responder groups, absolutely vital. If you have a heart attack right now, think of yourself or the one next to you. How long do you think you're going to be waiting for an ambulance to come from Virginia? Because this is our primary service area. Anybody know?
Is there a train?
Is there a train? Excellent question. So 19 minutes is the Google time. I would probably shave a minute or two off of that, but if there's a train, 19 minutes. What's your survivability in cardiac arrest? 19 minutes into a cardiac arrest? 0. You lose 10% of your survivability for each minute that passes. If no CPR is in progress, if no AED is delivered, you don't have a chance unless you have a first responder from Clinton Township coming, putting on that AED and doing CPR. You really don't. If you're in full cardiac arrest, the statistical odds are 0. So first responder groups are absolutely vital, and they are having trouble. So we're all talking about ambulances up here. I want to talk about EMS care delivery as a continuum, because ambulances don't save lives. First responders and EMTs, the people that respond and lay hands on that patient first, those are the ones that save lives. If we get here 19 minutes later, we can give them good drugs, we can assess the rhythm that they're in, we can provide advanced airway maneuvers, and we can support that life. But if it's 19 minutes and there's no care in that intervening time, well, the best ALS in the world is going to do you a lick of good. You're still dead. So first responder groups, people that are available and able to put that AED on, the automatic external defibrillator, able to do CPR, that is vital in the chain of survival. So while we focused a lot on ambulances, I don't want to overlook first responder groups. And some of them are struggling as well. There's one group, and I don't name names because the people that are trying to do it are trying the best they can, but they have less than a 10% response rate. So if you live in that area, well, there's 10% chance you'll get a first responder. Most of them are under 50% at this point. They're all struggling to have a shirt, but do you blame them? They get $2 or $3 a call. They have day jobs. They're not available 24/7. Sometimes there's only 2 or 3 first responders in an entire area. But again, only the first responders that are registered in that area are paid for that call. We don't have a countywide first responder group. There's technology that exists now that could ping the 3 closest first responders to a cardiac arrest and would send them to that. I don't care whether they're from Gilbert, whether they're from Clinton, whether they're from Mount Iron. Who cares? First responder is a first responder. Again, we have it set up so we're delivering care according to what they call RDID lines, little parochial areas of response rather than need. I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, thank you all for some of those questions. I know that there's a lot of options for solutions, and I know yesterday on the webinar too, there was, the discussion with like collaboration versus, there's a lot of terminology being used rather than and I guess I just will open it up to questions and I think just be timing, it being an hour into it, let's see if everyone has like one question and it's most pressing. Charlie, your Counselor Bearboot.
I've been around a long time. I've been through this whole scenario from start to finish, the way the old systems ran and all the new systems are. I've been a counselor for 26 years in Virginia, so I've seen the whole realm. There was a voluntary taxing district at one time. Nobody wanted it because we gave them everything for free. My wife came up with this idea. I'm gonna tell you what it is. The charge to each individual in your 911 area, wherever you want to call it, your service area. Charge it as a taxing district or the county, whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. Let that community keep the dollars in their buckets, and then anybody can backfill. We can backfill to those communities if we run short on dollars and stuff. That's the solution for your money. But you have to have our stupid state legislators, excuse the ones that are here, because they're good to us, but the ones down in the Twin Cities, they don't give a rat's hind end about northern Minnesota or rural Minnesota. They don't have to worry about it. They've got all their ambulances close, they don't have the time frame that we have to run. But this would be a solution if we can put together and get the legislator to approve it, or even a partial one, the county to do it, either St. Louis, Itasca, Koochiching, whatever, if they would be willing to do this. And I'm gonna make some enemies by saying this, but you gotta have the money to increase these services. And that's a simple way. We figured it out, 25 bucks a family would cover it. You just mentioned 30 bucks, maybe it's up to 30 now. But 25 bucks a family. Virginia's is telling 87.12. Figure that out. It's almost $500,000 when you figure out what we could put into it. Covering, we could draw from it if services were needed from your area that you cover. So then the communities that have to pay us back wouldn't have to pay that because we could backfill them for that, and they could pay the difference. Simple solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Are there other service providers here that want to, feel free, even if you don't have a question, if you want to just state what you're facing too, so that county commissioners or state representatives can hear. And also County Commissioner Judovich did come in. Commissioner Nelson.
I apologize, I'm moving a little slow today because I probably could use some EMS service yesterday. But working, managed to break a couple of ribs, so if I'm looking a little funny, I apologize. Look, for the first time in the history of St. Louis County, you have 4 rural commissioners who quite frankly are the majority of the board. Commissioner McDonald, Commissioner Judovich, Commissioner Mustoff, and myself. When you see the 4-3 votes, yeah, there's 4-3 votes. We have talked, I have made 4 different runs at taking care of ambulance runs and unorganized townships and failed every time. We won't fail this year. Commissioner Judovich, Commissioner McDonald, and I have a plan for putting money into unorganized township calls. It's not enough money. It's not. Folks, it'll help. It'll help. Folks, I've been to DC. We've all been to DC making runs on what are we doing, folks? Our rescue squad goes up into the Boundary Waters, which we get nothing. We get 0 for that. Do you know what a run for a rescue squad costs into the Boundary Waters? 60 grand, 50 grand, something like that. And we're supposed to support that Waterborne National Park with Cooch County here. They know what it's like too. We're supposed to support the Superior National Forest. We're supposed to support emergency services in the Boundary Waters, and we get nothing back from the feds. And we've tried. So as I'm griping about other entities in government here, I want to touch on a couple of other things, because we, St. Louis County, we fund the first emergency service that goes out on every call. on every call, at least all winter long. And that is the public works folks that are out there plowing the roads, getting everything clear so that y'all can get there. And by the way, thank you for what you do. If I haven't said that already, I'm gonna say it again. And I'll say it 3 different ways. Megui chiquitos, thank you. That's how much I appreciate what all is being done. But folks, our state legislature feels that it's appropriate to charge sales tax on all of those trucks that plow the roads. So I'm gonna ask our state legislator that's here, please put in a bill that takes that sales tax away from those plow trucks and graders and everything else, because that's the first line of emergency services, folks. And put right in the bill that the counties have to dedicate that sales tax to emergency services. Do you know what one of those trucks costs? Commissioner Yudovich, you want to tell them?
You know what, by the time you outfit the truck, and it's not just the truck, it doesn't show up like that. By the time you buy your sander and your belly scrape and all the goodies that go along, you're over, I want to say about right around
$250,000.
Yeah, I mean, close. By the time you add on the things, because they come as a chassis, and then it's like adding on a part. So it's one of those things where you have to buy these trucks and then equip them. And if we could save on sales tax, we probably could have bought one more truck for the last calendar year when we ordered trucks. But I don't think you'd see a problem having those dollars dedicated to EMS. We know that you do this because you care and you love what you do, and it's not because you're making a lot of money at it. We need to match that intensity. We need our legislators, but at the same time, let's put some dollars back into this. I've had conversation with the chief. I've been over to Virginia, obviously my chief, we talked, and we need to get these dollars in. So Commissioner Nelson's absolutely right. The legislature is a big deal.
And when people tell you it's not about money, you're being lied to. Okay? It's always about money. It is. It's about how we support the services. It's about how we support the individuals performing the services. The money that we are going to dedicate this year for county board action is the amount of monies that goes into unorganized townships that is from timber sales, gravel sales, land sales. And folks, I'm stealing it from Public Works because that's where the money goes now. So it's not like we can just find it. I have to take it from someplace else. I have the agreement of our sheriff and our county engineer to do it. And our county engineer is giving up the money. But I want to touch on one more state thing, okay? Because this is something that y'all got your green tax statements, didn't you? Those folks in St. Louis County? Okay. There's 7 of us that have the privilege of collecting that money. And I say that very tongue in cheek, but we collect it for all entities involved. Under Governor Goofy, and this is as close as I'll get to being political because everybody knows I don't fit in either party. But under Governor Goofy, they took 40% of all of the taxes that are paid by individuals that live on non-homestead parcels. Earlier, I heard how wealthy Greenwood Township is. Beautiful. They're wealthy. The money goes to St. Paul. 40%. 40% goes straight to St. Paul. It does not even pass go in Duluth or in the county. So do we need some changes? That would be another one. Can you imagine what that amount of money is staying here in St. Louis County that we can spend here on emergency services, on whatever, roads, whatever we're doing. But that money doesn't even slow down. And it all ends up in the metropolitan area. So help us help you. I'm telling you, we don't find money. We actually have to go out and take it out of the back pockets of every taxpayer in this county. And when we constantly see monies being siphoned off for other things. Okay, and Jesse Ventura. I mean, everybody loved it when they got a break in their taxes on their car plates. But the FUPAs that happened under that administration have been killing the rural areas ever since. St. Louis County, I can't speak for the other counties, but St. Louis County, we have 3 million plus acres of publicly owned land. And we have to go down there and grovel for a PILT payment. And I know our legislators work hard at it. I know they do. We have a representative that absolutely gets it, but folks, we don't have the votes in that metropolitan area to get some of these things done.
In case anybody was aware, PILT is payment in lieu of taxes. When you have the publicly owned lands, it's a different animal. So, yeah, we're working on it. I know
And I think-
Representative Sensted is working on it. We're trying to get some things changed.
Thank you, guys. And I think you bring up a good point with the PILT too, with our federal delegation too here and the Boundary Waters and the Superior National Forest and some of our, federal lands. I think it's just good to reiterate, and they've heard it before, but that those maybe unfunded or PILT payments, however we're supposed to be getting it back. There was quite an increase of calls. Matt and I were hearing up at the Boundary Waters, and Dustin, up in the Boundary Waters last year with all the increase of people coming to the area that aren't used to camping. And I know that it really taxes the area when we have to do a lot of those rescues. So that's one area, I think, again, with the federal delegation being here too, to talk about those reimbursement rates.
So just in closing, you have, I can tell you that 4 rural commissioners have heard it loud and clear, and we are gonna make some changes because we have 4 votes. Okay, we'll just make them. You'll probably see a 4-3 vote, but we will make the changes. And when they happen, again, it won't be nearly enough, but we're aware of it, we're cognizant of it. We're working with our legislators, both state and federal, and we're looking for answers too.
Thank you, guys. I think it's really good that we had such a great turnout for Itasca and Kuching, and I don't know, I know that as well, that Spokane has reached out, so I'm not sure if anyone from Carlton was able to attend either online or not. Other questions from people or experiences? Yeah.
I'll just kind of comment on everything you guys have said, and piggyback off of it.
Can you let us know where you're from?
Mark Madden, Chief in Mount Iron. We run about a first responder call a day, about 30 a month. And I've actually taken time to study when the calls are, tried to hire specifically for availability during certain times of the day. And the success has been minimal. I mean, we've gone from about a 30% response to about a 60% response, and I don't see it getting any better. We've run multiple calls when there's been some sort of incident, and Virginia's ambulances are out, and en route you're listening to, hearing Virginia ask to have Evelyn paged, and there's nobody in Evelyn, and Evelyn is having Buell paged. And then the last guy in Virginia's fire hall shows up by himself on an ambulance, and you sit there and wait for the appropriate help to show up. Our guys get frustrated because they can't do their job, or they're hamstrung and don't feel like they're doing any good. And it's hard to get people to come out and participate when they don't feel like they're making a difference. To some degree, for us as volunteers, it's not about the money, because we don't expect to make a lot of money, but we do expect to have the resources to make a difference. And our guys really get burnt out on the fact that they can't.
I'm Dave Sudberg, Mayor Tower, so I understand that has to work through with your budget because it's small. And I appreciate everything you guys are saying, because exact same things that you've already mentioned. And what I was wondering is, a lot of the things here are a little bit longer term, in which our budget, we're sitting here month to month going through things. So we're always looking for ways of doing things. For instance, one thing that we have is our city workers ones in their job description that they're EMR, so that they're actually on call when they're at work. And so we actually have them taking hours off the schedule, helping reduce our payroll for that time period. So I guess I'm asking you guys, have you guys done things that we can tactically implement so that we can recoup some of our expenses or not have the expenses or find more revenues, different things like that? So I'm looking for some solutions that maybe you've implemented to help.
Well, one of the things that we did is we hired single role EMTs and paramedics. For years and years, we'd only hired firefighter paramedics. And that was a shift, that was a cultural shift that occurred in our department where we had to look and say, what is the true need? Well, the transfers just kept going up and up and up. I mean, the hospitals are not delivering the care that these individual need at the local level, and so they're being forced out to these other hospitals. That is a strategic decision. They're strategically making the decision. In some cases, not to provide services. In other cases, they're struggling with personnel as well, to hire nurses and doctors. But we had to realize that firefighter paramedics, well, that's what you want on fire. Most of our calls, 86% of our calls now are medical in nature. So we had to staff according to what we needed to do. So we hired EMTs and we hired single role paramedics. We're not firefighters. There was a cost savings realized with that. But that also provided a pathway where we've had over a dozen EMTs that are now firefighter paramedics. So once they had their EMT, they got their paramedic, and then they transitioned to firefighter paramedic. So it kind of provided a pathway for those who are retiring or for those moving other ways. So we changed the model in just who we hired and how we staff. So you won't always get 2 paramedics on an ambulance. It'll be sometimes an EMT and a paramedic. So that was a cost saving thing that we did. But a lot of it was also, we didn't have a line of paramedic firefighters beat down our doors that were qualified and ready to go to work either. I mean, it's northern Minnesota, it's pretty rare, but yeah, we changed our staffing.
I've gone into the high schools to healthcare classes and tried recruiting that way. And you don't get many, but the 3 or 4 that end up taking EMS and, sparking interest in some of the kids is helping, whether they come to Evelyn or they go anywhere. At that point is, it doesn't matter. We're shaking the bushes. And also really, one of our EMTs runs the EMS program at the college, and another EMT teaches the EMT program. So that's really kind of a bonus for us in Evelyn too, because we have people right in the class saying, hey, it's a great place to work, you should come there, So that helps quite a bit. Thank you, Caitlin.
Other comments, questions?
Just for Aura, we've been more actively involved in writing grants. We never really looked at grant opportunities before, what's out there, so we will look at that.
I think one of the things that you need to do, and it's a little bit easier at a service like ours in service in Virginia, is because of the volume of staff. But if you look across the geographical region, and no offense to any of our town board members or our city governors, a lot of it falls on people like me that would be administrators, any of us in this panel administrators of services, is that we've changed so dramatically over the last 30 years. Our governance has not. The way that we operate the service, the way that we fund it, the way that we try to staff it. And a lot of it has to come to, and I will call out an example of our friends in White Lakes. Was it 4 or 5 years ago? You started that process with the EMSRB, do a study, really do an in-depth thing of what the service needs, all those different types of things, and they're a pretty good success story today. It helps if they have a hospital in their jurisdiction, but their governance and their city changed the way they operate that service. They changed the way that they fund that service. Is it going to be budget painful? It probably will be. Like I said, like it's been said many, many, many times over, volunteerism doesn't exist anymore. If we look at our friends, we put it in the fire service, you look at the Twin Cities metro area. What is it, Alan, 6, 7 departments in the last 18 months that were all volunteer in the metro are all full-time now. because they can't get anybody. So their city government and their town boards had to change it and adapt. And a lot of that does fall on the responsibility of us, because maybe we haven't done a really good job of educating our city, city leaders, and town board leaders, and our county board leaders. So we need to change the way that we look at this. So the service doesn't exist like it did 30 years ago, but yet we still try to operate that way. And obviously it doesn't work. And it's not just us, it's statewide. And it goes back even to the regulations. And I do appreciate that the MSRB is here. So there are changes that definitely need to come.
Speaking of the EMSRB, they do a thing called a rural ambulance survey, rural ambulance assessment. And when I first started in Evelyn, we had that done, and I was on the job for like 6 minutes, and all of a sudden there they were. I'm like, this is great. But boy, did that help, and they interviewed, I mean, everything. There's ideas that come out of the woodwork that because they all have such experience, and they can tell you, here's where you stand, here's what you need to do, these are the things that can help you with recruitment and training, and it was a great thing that happened to us. And it really opened up the eyes of our city councilors too, because a lot of the stuff they just never knew, and so I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, just to tag off what Teresa said, that's a study can sometimes bring out from folks in the area, and some of your best ideas comes from people that already have those answers, and when that's put into a study format and backed up by data. And I know Greenwood's doing a study right now, and I really, really appreciate that. We're really looking at it, but it really needs to be beyond Greenwood. It really needs to be an entire regional study to look at how we all can do things better. And I'm always open to that. If somebody wants to do a study that involves Virginia, I'd be all for that too, because there's always something we can learn on how to do better and best practices.
Oh, yes, I'm Jeff Moss, a 15-year firefighter, EMR, from the Emerald City, Greenwood. And one thing I've noticed over the years is that there are pensions involved. Police get pensions, firefighters have elite association pensions out there. One thing has always been lacking, I think there's been some movement over the years, legislature, I think it's been finalized where it went to. But we could have EMS pensions for first responders, EMTs, and so on. There is PARE out there, but most of us volunteers don't make enough to qualify for PARE. So that's a little bit of a roadblock. This is speaking to, recruitment and retention, because sometimes that helps, right? And I know that our township receives roughly $18,000 in state aid for PARE, for what we have as retirement relief system for the fire department. So that's not a heck of a lot of money. It's a chunk of money. But if something in kind could be done on the EMS side for all the townships and cities that could help fund that, it may help solve some of their woes. Comments, because they're
Or maybe not be taxed on the money that's, the volunteer stipends, then you end up paying tax on, so there's Donna getting $4. And at the end of the year, she has to pay taxes on it. It's like, why?
I mean, one more thing. We just did payroll for election judges, right? Third example. So legislators can write anything they want, right? And make it happen. Throw that out.
If I may, good evening, everyone. My name is Dylan Ferguson. I'm the Executive Director for the EMS Regulatory Board. And I think the point that you bring up this evening is an excellent one, sir. And there kind of exists a framework for this, kind of going back to that whole government as a whole approach. I think absolutely there are opportunities at the local government level, but I did want to point out that at the state level for emergency medical services in the volunteer EMS arena, we do have something that is referred to as the Cooper Sands program. Those of you that are service administrators probably know that you need to turn in your rosters once a year to make sure all that your people get credit, so that once they reach their 60th birthday, they have for lack of a better term, it is a pittance. It is nowhere near the amount that it should be for so many years of dedicated service, and it's also taxed. But you know what, because there exists kind of a framework already with that program, that might potentially be an opportunity for some legislative movement to make some changes to that program, to make some updates and to modernize it, to kind of help it with the retention of the individuals within the EMS community. I use the word retention specifically, and I like the fact that you six directors really focused on recruitment and retention. In so many places I hear recruit. Absolutely important. But one of the things that I have noticed in the numbers here as of lately that I've been studying since I came to Minnesota, I'm a transplant, much like you, ma'am, is that when we look at the number of EMRs and the number of EMTs that we're losing across the state, we find that, we lose about 1,100 EMTs in a given calendar year. That's how many certifications expire every single year. And what is really the most alarming to me is that 50% of them are under the age of 30 years of age. Now, that may not translate directly into the experience here in St. Louis County because of all the varying demographics that I think the panel has done a great job of kind of handling tonight. The fact that, aging population and obviously the folks providing those services are getting older as well. But when you look at an industry as an EMS, and you look at a profession, and really that's what we are. Whether or not you collect a paycheck doesn't make you more or less professional. But when you are losing, when 50% of the people you lose are your youngest generation, that is not sustainable. It simply is not. And if that is not a trend that we reverse and right quick, I promise you that a lot of the concerns and the challenges that these six have laid out before you tonight will come to fruition. They will come to a fruition up here on the range. They will come to fruition in Southwest Minnesota. And I would disagree to a point, they will also come to fruition in the metro. There are EMS staffing challenges across the state. And I'll also highlight from a financing perspective, and there have been a lot of discussions in the Minnesota legislature. I have seen bill after bill introduced, particularly in this legislative term, with everything introduced from $25 million to send to rural ambulance services to allow every single rural ambulance to hire a full-time manager. That was introduced by Representative Backer, I believe. And then there was another bill that was introduced to essentially send $50,000 to every single ambulance in the state. I think most of us are probably aware that the state currently has somewhere in the neighborhood, at least what's published in the media, so take that for whatever you will, somewhere in the neighborhood of a $9 billion surplus. And obviously, whenever you have those types of issues, there's always a lot of discussions in St. Paul. But I encourage everybody to let you know that these are types of discussions that are having that happen in St. Paul every day, and trying to get that consensus reached and trying to get things across the finish line becomes more and more of a challenge every single day from what I see. And in all fairness, I've only been here in Minnesota since the beginning of February. But that's kind of what we're seeing. So it's important to get involved. It's important to get involved. It's important to be connected with your local elected officials, with your state representatives and your state senators. But that's kind of just a quick overview. And to the state delegation in the room, I would highly encourage you to consider reviewing the Cooper Sam's program to see if there is some additional funding we can put to make that worth something, as a good gentleman back there has kind of highlighted. So I thank you, the panel, for indulging me for just a moment. So thank you.
I think I also saw one of the candidates, as most of you know, Senator Bach is retiring, Senator Thompsoni is retiring. These are people who have a lot of experience representing our area. And I did see that one of the candidates for Senator Senator Bach's district is here, Grant Houschild. Are you here? We're here. Okay.
Back here,
I don't know if there's
yeah.
any other candidates, but I just think it's important because people who are running right now too are trying to learn more about this issue. Ben Nugent's running for Senator Thomasoni's position. Is there anyone else? Just know that people are wanting to help out on this issue because it impacts all of us, definitely. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was just in connection with Bob and I'm around, and I said this for a few years, and I agree with everything that's being said. And when I go back and forth to the, it's amazing the number of ambulances, and I just had the good fortune of being in a fire commission for a number of years, so I appreciate it. And Ms. Elbrook, I think, said something about expanding hospital beds, and I agree, and I know in our local hospital, they've actually reduced the number of ICU beds, and so I feel like the ambulances go back and forth, and I feel like we need to work together on a better longer term solution, working with our hospitals and to get young people into health professions in general, whether it's EMS, whether it's nurses, doctors, lab techs. And I feel like now is the time we should jump on board. If we're going to invest millions of dollars in expanding the campus of our University of Minnesota, we should be working with them, kind of interdisciplinary, to make sure we get young people that want to stay in northern Minnesota so they can staff our hospitals, move to the rural area, and hopefully bring families with you who want to do this or whatever that might be. So I just feel like we need to put together a commission or a committee or somebody, something to work together now at the foundational level.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I was reminded too of, just the program that was mentioned about mental health. There are so many things that tie into it that we're facing, not just the, aging population. But, I mean, that program, we've been hearing about mental health forever and the transfers and where people are going, not having those services here. But am I mistaken? That's a grant, it's a grant, temporary grant.
Yeah.
Program. So, I mean, there's these great programs that are potentially out there, but we need to continue. That's like one thing we can continue on. And I'm reminded as well, Governor Walz they had that program where they paid for over 1,000 CNAs to be trained. So maybe it's another look at a different type of program that could help with training costs and paying those to respond to this staffing situation.
And can I give one more reminder? To everybody in the room who's not aware, the state does offer for emergency medical technician training. The MSRB will reimburse up to $600 for an initial EMT class and $125 for an EMT refresher course for volunteers. That's information that can be gotten off the website, working with Arrowhead as well. And there are bills in the legislature to actually increase that amount from $600 to $900, keep pace with the fact that the cost of education has gone up. So for those of you that are operating, volunteer organizations, just please remember that resource is out there. The state will pay today up to $600 for your EMT course. For an initial EMT program. So that's something that the MSRB has been working to try to get the word out. Just because I've heard training and the cost of that brought up a couple times tonight, I just wanted to make sure to hit that point home. So thank you.
Other questions online at all?
No questions online. Just a comment. I think it was a great discussion. You got a lot of people here and you get a lot of boots on the ground here. And I've always been a person that we can sit down and talk about the issues are. You got to get an action plan in place, right? And where's Commissioner Nelson? And talked about money. Well, yeah, it's all about money, right? So how do we get the funding? Well, it's a couple different ideas around it. So there's one category bucket that needs to be worked on, right? The funding mechanism. The other is personnel. Okay, how do we get personnel in place? Talk about training dollars for the personnel, right? The other thing I heard tonight is essential. Ambulance personnel EMS should be essential. That's legislative, right? So there's three tasks right there that I see just tonight that came out of this. So the real question is who's going to take task one, who's going to take task two, and who's going to take task three, get people together and start putting a plan in place. Now, going back to Itasca County, where I spent my 40 years at, Nashwauk Ambulance Service used to have a taxing district. They never implemented it, but they got it done legislatively if they needed it. Okay, and I know it went away after a certain period of time. Taxing district, nobody likes to pay, but the reality is the funding has to come from someplace to create the sustainability of it. Just the basic service of providing ambulance service in your geographical area. You're going to chase runs all the time and raise that revenue to keep the ambulance service afloat? I don't think so. I'll just share a story. I used to live in Greenway Township. They wanted to do away with first responders. I went and said, you tax me whatever you need to tax to keep those first responders there. I may not need it today, but I might need it tomorrow. I want the service there, right? Those are the things when you talk about people, you gotta get the people that live in those areas to come up and speak for state legislators. Get whatever it is that we need to create the sustainability that we need to keep these services running. So again, I see funding, I see personnel, and essential service.
I like the point you brought up about the taxing districts. International Falls is dealing with that right now, and Commissioner Schobel is with me from Coochin County. One of the issues we ran into in the legislative language for forming a taxing district is specifically, we're dealing with 4 separate entities. We can still move forward with the taxing district, and we can still have some of those entities opt out of joining the taxing district. That's a problem. Why would you buy the cow when you get the milk for free? So we need to get some of that language changed, that if a taxing district, I mean, we kind of got to do an all for nothing. So if we have that donut hole, 4 entities, 3 of them sign on and the one in the middle doesn't, we cannot refuse service to the one in the middle. They don't have to pay and we have to provide the service. So there's more discussion that needs to go into the creation of and the formation of the taxing districts. It is up to the voters. It is up to the constituents to elect to take that taxing district on. But the parameters that follow that are not consistent. So just a talking point for our legislation.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Theodore. Excuse me, Jim Theodore. I'm today representing the fire department and first responder group, and I really want to back up a little bit from the taxing district. That's a whole, I think that's a monkey going to be on our back for a long time to work out. I want to mention something that Chief Lewis brought up. That's about first responders and the inability to respond and the lack of response. You know, when you get away from Virginia or Hibbing and you start getting into these small rural areas where we function, I'd like you to know that I'm sitting with guys here that we respond side by side almost all the time. We're underfunded. We're understaffed, just like everybody else. We don't get paid for calls. There is no compensation. When you're an EMS provider or first responder, you don't get a pension. You don't get a salary. I hear you talk about the Cooper Sam's program. Well, that's great if you're on an ambulance, a volunteer ambulance. First responders, not eligible. I heard a gentleman mention that there's training for EMTs and EMT refreshers. There's dollars out there. Great. What do we get as first responders? Quarter mile down the road, there's a first responder class going on, and there's about 12 people in that class. And I can speak for those guys, and not one of them getting paid. They're not compensated for their training. And when they get done with this training, they're going to saddle up and they're going to go out on these calls to help everybody in our township and help your ambulances out there. You know, and I feel like we're being left out of this whole package. You know, I sit back and I see that they'll pay a skating rink attendant $15 an hour, right? They don't have to have any training to do that. They show up and watch them skate. We have to have 153 hours of training to become a 1001 certified firefighter. 40 hours of training to be a first responder. And much of this time is uncompensated, and we're footing the bill for that ourselves within our own townships. And I think when you start to take a look at all of this stuff, that some of this money should flow back to these smaller organizations and more rural groups that are really fighting out there to provide you that 20-minute buffer that you need, Chief. I mean, we get it. We're waiting for you out here. And we're the ones that are waiting while you're stopped at a train. And, you know, we're doing our best to get out there. And I just have to say, from where I'm at, I can see 70 years old, and during the day, you have no idea how many calls I go on by myself. And I'm the only one there. We're doing it. We're doing the best that we can. Don't forget about us. And I'll just leave it at that.
Jim, you're absolutely right, and I feel terrible about leaving first responders out of my entire thing because I spent 30 years as one in Field Township, and you're right, 1000% right. You are being left out, and I feel like a complete heel for not even addressing that. Thank you for bringing it up.
And I mean, I get this, why Graham was hosting this meeting is so everyone can have a voice, because we do what, I mean, we want the perspective of everybody. That's why we brought the legislators here, the county commissioners, so that we can move forward together, because there's, I mean, again, Rams, we're not, we, you know, we have the city, the townships and the schools and stuff as an organization, but we try to branch out and try to host this as a, you know, because it impacts our whole region. So it's very good to have you here, and we want those voices in any meetings going forward. Julie, yeah, but Julie, sorry, 3 times on Eugenia. I know you want to talk.
I apologize, I'm gonna need to leave. I'm State Representative Julie Sandsted. I'm out of District 6A, which is Hibbing. First, I want to thank you all so much for the rich conversation that we have had tonight. And before I leave, if this conversation continues, I'm going on record to say, I want you to contact me personally if there's a specific you want me to look at changing. So Commissioner, I want that language in an email. I want that. You are more on top of those specifics. This panel has some of the specifics with the reimbursements that I need to know. I'm not on the committee that deals with a lot of this, but I am a good friend with John Hewitt. I'm on his bill. I'm backing him totally. He's got some great ideas. The other thing I want to say is my husband and I are both volunteer firefighters and first responders. I will be truthful. Mine has now lapsed. I need to get that back up to date. So I know personally, the work that you are all doing and the struggles personally that you are facing. I want to talk a little bit about recruitment. I think that some of you talked about it, touched on it a little bit. I think education is really going to be key here. I think we have an opportunity with an academies model high school in this area that is looking at healthcare, and other school districts that are doing different types of academy styles or healthcare introductions. I think our youth are going to be a great opportunity or a great asset if they can have that exposure early, if they can be pulled in and mentored, and maybe even given some credit for that. Not every kid is going to go to a 2-year, not every kid is going to go and graduate and go to a 4-year college, but they are going to need a skill set. And this is definitely something that we as a rural community could use. So I think that there's a whole wealth of information to be had there, and an opportunity that's maybe gone untapped, or the opportunity is going to present itself as we move forward. And I'm an educator myself, and I'm totally behind that. I think that we need to start looking at those things. There's so many different particulars for each of your subsets or your communities. It's not going to be a one size fits all, but I agree with you. If we can compartmentalize this into buckets, it's a great place to start. And as a state legislator, for as long as I'm there, I will fight for these issues. I'm here as a volunteer firefighter, and I did my work as a first responder because we had the need. We needed to make that call. Unfortunately, it was too late in my family's circumstance, but those first responders were there, and they gave all as fast as they could. And even though it didn't change the outcome for my dad, it changed my heart for the work that you do. And it is, I firmly believe we are here to pay it forward. And so my husband and I are paying it forward by hopefully being there. And I know we've been there for other families too. And we will continue to do that. But it's not about me. It's not about him. It's about all of us in this room and all of the work that we're doing. So again, a heartfelt appreciation and thank you so much. You can find me at rep.julie.sandsted@house.mn. Email me, let me know what you need. I'll get on it. I will respond. I can't promise you it'll change overnight. Oftentimes negotiations come down to 3 or 4 people at the end of session in rooms that I'm not in. That makes it very difficult, but I can squawk loudly. I can be putting on pressure before those final negotiations are made. And that's my job, and I'm happy to do it. And thank you for that opportunity. Okay, thank you all. I gotta run. Have a good day.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about the fact of the taxing district, you know, you said to take it off the table, but if you think about it, 1/10 of 1 mil, $300,000 house in Greenwood, Eagles Nest, $30 a year. That would include local people as well as people who are from other areas who have houses and would keep our areas working together. As somebody who does, I'm with Tower Ambulance. I run, we run 526 calls a year, which doesn't sound like much, but for a town of less than 500, that's a lot. Chief Lewis talks about him coming in for ALS. All of our ALS people, last year we were at 17% for ALS. So that means 17% of our calls ALS came in for. Were all of those true ALS? I don't know, but you know what? My people on the crew made that call and they called for the protection of our area people. And I don't think that many of our people feel like we're important. We have too many people saying rude things, walking out of meetings, and it's not okay. We just need to start remembering that we have to work together. And when we're not working together and when we're being unfair, it hits our departments. So when you see somebody who shows up to your house, these people here that are doing EMS, we're giving a lot more than you know. We're leaving our children's concerts. We're walking out of family meals. We're doing all of this and we're doing it for next to nothing. And in the long run, we're doing it because we choose to. We're happy to come and help. I wonder if you guys are happy to help us.
Hi, my name is Lee Peters, and I live in Greenwood Township. Taxing district for EMS is probably basically inevitably a good thing. In Greenwood Township, the town board sent out requests for proposals last week to hire a professional consultant to look at our area and come up with suggestions for regional approach for our ambulance service. And I can speak probably for most of the people in the township that we're not against paying a district tax, but it's gotta make sense. And that's gotta be worked through the MSRB for one thing. But we are a population center now. Our ambulance is located significantly away from us. So if we're gonna talk about joining a tax district, we've got to look at the boundaries of these ambulances. Are you willing to do that?
Well, I think that, this is the elephant in the room, right? So this is something that the good chief mentioned, it has been listed in the Office of Legislative Audit Report. You bring it up within the context of your area and, really what you're dealing with there. International Falls brings up the issue of how do you handle the situation when you have the donut hole of the individuals who you've got 3 municipalities that are willing to sign on, and one who doesn't. How do you deal with that situation? So under existing law, with the authority that I have today, the EMSRB cannot unilaterally do what it is that you're asking. Neither I nor the board actually has the authority to do that. The only way that today that a primary service area can change is essentially by mutual agreement of all of the EMS services involved. Now, there are a lot of arguments that can be made for all of those different positions, right? It's, we could say, hey, we need to do this, hey, we need to do that, hey, we need to, and have there be disagreement. And the one thing that I like to see out of this, these 6 up at the front of the room tonight, is something I saw that, to be honest, I haven't seen in my career in EMS in a long time. And that was actually a unified front.
You know what? I hate to interrupt.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I hate
sir.
to interrupt, but I reside in an ambulance district that has 7 entities. The entity that I belong to is obviously the highest population based out of the center. Do you think that the ambulance district boundaries need to be looked at in relation to the population center, that's in our treatment.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt, because I know that there's a lot of different specifics, and we've been, the timeline was kind of be an hour and a half. Because we know that tonight's meeting was kind of an introductory thing to bring people together. We know that every area is different, and we have, you know, again, I got calls from Cloquet, we have a Cascade County here, I know Lake County and Cochise County. And I think that with our state representatives that we've had here, but also our area, we are geographically large and have less representatives because of our population. So I think it's beneficial for all of us to work together. We're not going to come to any solution tonight because there are going to be different solutions in different areas. So what we were thinking about is having, I know, but what I was, I just.
And Greenwood was mentioned earlier, and not in a good way. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. This is again, we should all be, you know, coming together, and I know that everyone is gonna have a different opinion and that there are different areas that have different solutions. We're not gonna have the answers tonight, but moving forward and what they talked about at the webinar yesterday as well is, you know, instead of consolidation, you know, talking about collaboration, and that's what I think that we all need to do. And so in maybe a month or two, I'm gonna work with these panelists, but also I asked if people wanted to sign up their email, because again, unless Rams, we only have our own membership lists. If you want to come to another another meeting like this, please sign up with your email, and we'll again push it out to the departments that that get that. But we would welcome future discussions to talk about kind of what Pat talked about. What are the solutions and how can we do this? I will say too, at the state legislature right now, yes, contact your state rep if there's a piece of legislation that you're supporting. The issue with our state legislature right now is there's only 4 weeks left, and they're in contested, heated issue. So is there going to be anything that happens in this next 4 weeks? I don't know, but yes, call them. But our meeting, you know, our next meeting, I think that we will, you know, it's going to be a month or two. So that session will be done, but long-term solutions, we're still facing this for the long haul. So I think Rams is willing to host another meeting and try to bring people together. So, you guys have closing comments at all?
I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the first responders who do keep patients alive until we get there to these remote areas. I want to thank, you know, everybody in EMS that goes in and day out, whether they're paid or not. It's a grueling career. It's a grueling volunteer. It's a grueling calling. So thank you for coming. Thank you for showing that you care, because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be here tonight.
And just mimic what Chief Lewis said, I thank everybody that's in this room for your interest, and you know, if you're here, then I mean it. There's a lot of EMS first responders and EMTs and paramedics in here that are, man, my hats off to every one of you. You know, thank you all. I want to do a special shout out to Mike Harry over here from Morris Township. I don't know that there is another person in northern Minnesota that responds to every single call in his township. The man is amazing, and you need to be recognized.
Yeah, Mikey.
I just want to say, this is not, these are not issues unique to northern Minnesota. I mean, we obviously have our special subset of issues, but this is a national crisis, and it's very encouraging to see the turnout that we have and the interest and the drive. The questions and engagement are very encouraging, and we can't let it die here. Let's just keep moving forward and having these discussions and putting the pressure where it needs to be applied in order to affect some change.
Yeah, I thank you all for coming. She said, we have to work together. We have to keep pushing to get this through. We can't stop. We should just stop in 84. Should have kept pushing it. Get the money coming. It's gotta be essential. We gotta have to. work together. Not gonna take one.
Big Witch, thank you for having us and for having me speak. It was enlightening to see the stories and to hear, you know, the challenges the other department have. It's nice to know that little old Minnesota isn't alone out there. And we need you. So I hope you all go out and find somebody and recruit them to become an EMT on a new line. so. Yeah, thanks.
I'll echo, what everybody else has said. I'll also kind of jump on Teresa's bandwagon. If you look at a guy like Jim Theodore, who is the perpetual guy to do the things for the right reasons. He spent a whole career as a full-time firefighter paramedic. He's continued to do this in his off season or his retirement. I'll be honest, Jim did my first EMS class 31 years ago. And so Jim was only 12 when he did it. There's a lot of really good people in the room, and we do on the bigger services. I can't speak for Alan, but I've done we do take with a grain of salt, some of the backbones of these things. That funding should cover our first responders. So maybe even on the legislative session or in some of the funding, X amount of dollars that we get out of a patient reimbursement should go to our first responder groups. It does cost that money. I was very surprised at the interest. I'm not gonna, that showed up. I would also encourage you to look at some of the services, look at, we've got one of our kids and counselors in the back. Why did they make the decisions that they did to change the way that they model? Why did the way Lakes do the things that they did to change the way that they model? There's a lot of success stories that are out there. And a lot of it is communication. It's funny that communication is the root of all problems, but yet the number one solution to most problems is good communication. So if you go back to what Mr. Maduri said about creating a bucket list, there's a lot of talk, and you can pick any subject that you want. There's a lot of talk. What we're missing is the action behind it. And unfortunately, that people that are willing to drive that ship, again, I will call out my friend Jim Theodore, who's been doing it for a tremendous amount of time, is that there's not enough of us in the background that's willing to take up the fight that he's done for the last umpteen decades. So, I thank you for the opportunity, and I really do thank you for the interest. It's not an unsolvable problem. It's just, again, going back to it, is that we all need to be on the same page. We all need to be on the same page.
Well, I want to thank the panel for coming out of their busy lives. Send out further information on the meeting.
We're starting to jump off, so.
Thank you to those who joined online.